Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be an interesting one. I've been trying to record this a bit, at least 2 or 3 times, and I keep going on this 20-minute tangent before I actually get into the meat and potatoes of the video. So I'm going to skip the lengthy explanation and my thoughts on what it is that's happening right now until the end of the video, and I'm just going to dive into what I want to present right now. So I want to organize a game jam, and I personally really enjoy narrative games, story-based games. I've participated in a lot of game jams in the past that specifically don't make it particularly about stories. And in those game jams, you see a lot of innovations from other users that concentrate on like interesting game mechanics or concepts, stuff like that. But I often tend to lean more towards story-based games, story-based submissions for my games, for the game jams, and most often I am late to the submission because the game jam is about 3 days long. So I want to organize my own game jam, and this game jam is going to be concentrated primarily around, well, story-based gameplay or narrative games. I figured, put some money away, maybe like $100, $50 for first, second, third place, something like that, and just bring a little bit of incentive to participate and participate in the whole thing myself. Of course, excluding myself from the pool of winning games, because that would be kind of weird. It's like, hey, I win my own competition. Fantastic. I'm also the judge. So to be honest, this whole thing is just an excuse to make participate in a game jam. So, in order to make a game for a game jam that concentrates on narrative games, since the biggest thing is usually creating the dialogue systems in these games, what I figured I would do is I would prep by creating a tool that's publicly available for creating dialogue trees. So this tool is found on my website, and you can see it in the tools called Dialogi. Courtesy to one of my students for the name. So this is a dialogue builder. There are many like it. There are other dialogue builders out there. This particular dialogue builder is based on my particular dialogue handling algorithm that I have been creating and recreating from prototype to prototype as of the past few years. That's basically what's been happening. I just noticed a trend that in a lot of my games, a dialogue system would just kind of manifest in this one particular format. And I figured since it repeats over and over and over again from prototype to prototype, maybe it's time to consider that system to be a fairly functional system. So the tool that you see in front of you is essentially supposed to alleviate the amount of time you spend building the dialogue dictionaries and dialogue arrays for your game, and you can just concentrate on actually building out the dialogues rather than having to spend time, say, finagling with JSON files. Taking all this and typing this up manually. That would just be a nightmare. And that's what I've been doing for a lot of my dialogues. So this is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to save time on the creation of your dialogues. I'm making this tool publicly available. It's a part of my website. You don't need to log in. You don't need anything. You can just work in it. You can save files from it. You can load files into it, and you can build your dialogues. So why don't we take a look at how that actually looks? So the way the dialogue system builders works, or the dialogue builder works, is that it creates the character dialogue files. So in the end, you get a single JSON file for a single character. What this means is that we can create a new dialogue, and let's say when you walk up to a character, there's maybe 3 dialogues you can talk to them about. Let's say there's a dialogue for "What's the news?" Now we're gonna keep things friendly, and we're not gonna keep any questions, and we're gonna keep things maybe without spaces as well. We're gonna save it, and we can create another one. And let's say, what's another thing that we can talk to the character about? That particular character, maybe he's just standing there in the middle of like a forest on a crossroads, and you walk up to them and you can talk to them. Okay, so got any work? So got any work around here? Okay, let's create another one. Anything for trade, and we save it. Cool. So let's go to what's the news. So when you walk up to the character, let's say, when you interact with them, the list of dialogue subjects pops up. And the dialogue subjects are, what's news, what's the news, got any work, anything for trade. So what we can do is create a single message, and let's say this character's name is Boris. All right, and he's going to say, well, technically when we walk up to the character, we'd be the first ones to say something. So we can say player, and then we're going to say, what's the news around here? Okay, so we're going to give this message a key because every message has to have a unique key that identifies this particular message. And we can create a response. So this is going to be start response. The character is Boris, of course. And then we're going to say that these two messages are connected. So once this is done, it's going to go into this message. And Boris says, there's been some weird readings coming from the forest deep. All right, fair enough. Maybe Boris doesn't say just this one thing. We can add a message and say, you want to take a look at it, and the player can have a choice. So let's say this is going to be signal choice. So we're going to connect them together, and the choice can be done by the player. But if you're handling your game in a different way, maybe you don't need to provide the character. Maybe it's a game where your dialogue are happening at the bottom of the screen. Maybe your game is this sort of game where the dialogue is an actual speech bubble popping up next to your character. So based on how you make your game, you may or may not need this particular input. So there's no harm in not using it. If you don't implement it, then you don't use it. So let's say in this case, this is the player making a choice. So maybe it's gonna have a pop-up that says player is speaking. So the player can say sure, or the player can have no thanks. Can say no thanks. Okay, cool. So now we have a choice. You can see that the messages get highlighted in orange, indicating that they are not leading anywhere. So there's a couple of safety measures that I've tried to implement to make sure that you don't end up designing a dialogue that leads into nothing, or you end up, let's say, with multiple messages that have the same key or the key that doesn't exist. So it attempts to kind of safeguard you from doing that. Okay, so let's say if you say sure, we get a new quest. Well, okay, we can pick quest, give quest, quest give. So we can say signal quest. This is going to lead here. The quest key, of course, this will tie into how you would design your quest system. In my case, again, my dialogue system and my quest system have been going on a particular trend. Their structure has been pretty much repeating from game to game. So that's why these particular dialogues are designed to be compatible with my dialogue systems. And just by judging what kind of key value pairs and what kind of data is involved here, you can design your dialogue system to use the same exact keys. So for example, when you give the player a quest, you're probably going to be using dictionaries to save that data. So you gotta save the quest under particular keys. So let's do weird signal. And then the quest title is Signals from the Deep. You can see I'm a huge science fiction fan. I can already imagine an actual quest in my game. The description, type in a description. And then, of course, the quest will be set as pending. You could say, oh, you're talking to a character, and the character's like, you need to talk to Steve. Oh, you killed Steve. Okay, well, quest failed. We're going to give you a quest, and it's already failed. So that's something you can do. Now, there's also multiple output keys that are involved with a give quest system. You don't have to use them, but what this essentially does is it allows you to have a safety fallback on what happens when there's already a quest with this name that's already in the player's dictionary, in the player's quest dictionary. Well, I mean, you could have the character say, let's see, what's his face? This is Boris. Okay, so already has is going to be the key, and it'll lead to there. And then he will say, oh, sorry, that's already been done by someone. And who knows, it's like a little error fallback. Now, if you program your quest system and dialogue system and game correctly, and there are no, say, errors that may result in Boris starting his conversation from the very beginning, then you don't even have to worry about this. If you don't use it, you don't implement it, right? If you have a rock steady quest system and dialogue system, and your character will never lose track of where they left off in their dialogue, then you don't really need this. In my case, I've implemented it just in case. It is good to have, right? Better have it not needed than need and not have it. Okay, well, what if the player says yes? All right, so we can say signal quest agree, and then we're going to say player's the one that says this, and the player, let's say, what does the player say? Well, sure, quest is given. Actually, in this case, it can be Boris. And then Boris says, splendid. Now get out of my face. If I spell splendid right. Cool. So agree goes here, and there we go. So this allows you to create just about any dialogue tree. They can have choices. They can have, let's see, you can add experience. If your game doesn't have experience points, you just don't use this particular option. Choices, you can pick random messages. So instead of regular message, you can have a random message. Of course, it's up to you to program the actual random message choosing in your game, but this is the tool that will provide you or me with a JSON file that has those definitions already present. So let's say this is it. Let's say this whole thing is our dialogue. We're going to save, and we're going to export. What this does is it creates a JSON file. You can see it's just been downloaded. And you can see that the structure of the JSON file, if we take a look at JSON validate, paste that in. Okay, so as you can see, we have at the top level the two quests, the three quests actually. Well, not quests, but technically dialogues, subjects that you can talk about. So inside of here, what's news? We have visible or invisible, because you can have a main character who has like a couple of dozen dialogues, and then those dialogues become available as you progress the game. Not all of them have to be visible right away. Well, okay, so you can make them invisible, and of course you can do that from within here, make this dialogue invisible. And let's say if this one here is visible, but maybe got any work is invisible. Maybe he's not going to give you any work until you do something. All right, fair enough. So we know that the actual dialogue is called got any work, the dialogue key. So let's say after completing the quest, maybe he even gives you this option right after you agree to do a quest. Well, we can say change dialogue. This is the dialogue key you'd like to change. We'd like to make it visible. And that's it. You can just continue working with as many as you want. Of course, maybe at the end, you would like to make the dialogue close so that you can release the player. There we go. Perfect. Now, I had specifically went with a system that makes you assign a custom key to each dialogue message, because this allows me to very easily make multiple messages point to the same outcome. So let's say we have here dialogue node. This is where you agree. This is where you decline to do the quest. Okay, so if you agree, your additional dialogue option will become visible. If you disagree, well, I mean, then it's just going to go into close. And there we go. And then you got your dialogue system that kind of goes into the close message. You don't have to create two of them. If you want, you can create two of them. The system allows you to do that. So right at the end, you get this whole dictionary. This structure has been pretty much repeating itself throughout many of my projects, so I just stick into the structure as it is. And there's the message data, which contains all the individual messages. We have start. Start leads into the next message of start response. Start response leads into the next message of signal choice, and etc., etc. There's some system data, so the editor position, this is irrelevant for your game. This is only so that you could say, oh, I've reloaded my browser, or I came back and I would like to continue working on the character. Well, no problem. Click import, open up the dialog, and I get your dialogues here. This is a different dialog file, that's why it shows a different set of messages, but they do all load up. And yeah, you can continue working on it, you can save it, you can export it, and that is it. That's the whole dialogue system. Now, these types of dialogue options have been implemented, well, based on the most used types of messages that I've been implementing into my games. So we have quest giving, quest changing, checking if a quest is, let's say, in this case, we can check if the quest is pending, and we can say, oh, what's the message that would go if it's pending? And then you could say, what's the message that would go if it's, what is it, completed, right? Completed. What's the message that we need to go if it's failed, right? And what's the message to go if you don't even have that quest in the first place? Again, you don't have to use the last one. It's kind of a safety fallback. So, well, now we have a nice branching path here, depending on what is the status of your quest. And you can have different things happening based on that. We can have inside of each quest, you can have tasks. So I usually see in a game one single quest, big name, big fancy title, and then multiple tasks that you need to do throughout that quest. You know, go there, and once you go there, the next task pops up, access the vault, and he accesses the vault, the next task pops up, figure out what happened in the vault, etc., etc. So it just keeps adding tasks under the same quest. We have dialogue change. You've seen that. You've seen me use that before in order to enable or disable certain dialogue from being listed when you talk to a character. We have flags. Flags, I think, would be very useful because it's an invisible marker that is getting written into your player's array of flags. And you could have a flag that reads, for example, discovered well, right? Discovered well. Okay, so maybe there's in the forest, there's a well, and there's a bunch of skeletons around it, right? So as soon as you walk up to that well, a flag could be written called, let's say, discovered skeleton well. And it's going to be added. And then if it's added successfully, you can tell it to go to a different message. And if there was already one, well, I mean, you could just leave it empty and nothing's going to happen. If you want something to happen, you could make something happen. Maybe when it's already there, you could add another flag when you visit it a second time, right? Maybe you have an intricate game where the player goes there once, finds the well, goes back, talks to the character, okay, cool, and then goes back, and then finds the well again, and another flag is added, right? Maybe there's somebody you can talk to who gives you the flag. So with this in place, I think this covers a pretty large set of scenarios. Visiting places, checking for statuses requests, changing statuses of quests, closing dialogues in a way where if you come back to them, you just continue from where you left off, closing the dialogues in a way where if you come back to them, the NPC, they just relist the list of dialogues and you can choose a different dialogue to talk about, right? Maybe some games don't deal with dialogues like Fallout does, where you talk to the character and then it's like subject 1, subject 2, subject 3, subject 4, right? Maybe in your game it's more like a short hike where you talk to the character and then you have to repeatedly talk to them to go to the next dialogue subject. So in this case, it's up to you which one you want to use. You don't have to implement, let's say, continue, or you don't have to implement relist, right? If you don't need it, you don't have to use it. So this hopefully will shave off a large chunk of time when I am making the dialogues for my Game Jam game, right? So I figured, okay, well, to keep things fair, I'll make this available for anyone. This is on my website, theconceptbay.net. You can go to the tools. You can access the tool. And we have plenty of time to maybe get some kinks ironed out, any errors, any weird bugs, discover stuff that doesn't work, and get this thing operational up to the time the jam starts. So, yeah, I hope this will come in handy. I'm definitely going to come in handy for me and anyone else who's looking to clear up a large chunk of time when they're defining their dictionaries, when they're defining their dialogues. I hope this will help them as well. So let me know what you think. Come play around with the website, poke around, see what it does, see how it works, see if you can implement it into your own game. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find this useful. I'll see you guys in the next video, and have a good one.